Members, take your seats, please.
The House will come to order. The House will come to order. The chair recognizes the member from Auburn, Representative Osborne, who moves that the House adjourn from the session of January 6, 2022. Are you ready for the question? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and the House is adjourned. The House will attend to a prayer by House Chaplain Reverend Bob Stewart, pastor of St. Paul's United Methodist Church in Manchester.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Let us be in a spirit of prayer. O loving and gracious God, to us you have entrusted the task of governing this great state of New Hampshire. Make us faithful in our service. Keep our hearts centered on those we represent and stay centered on the good people of this state. Again, we ask for you to give us clarity and understanding of each other's viewpoints on the business before us today. Help us, O God, to listen closely to each other. In our voting, grant us wisdom and integrity. Guide and help us to be good stewards of all the resources of time, talent, and money that is at our disposal. O God, may we have the strength to stand tall in the face of conflict and the courage to speak with a calm voice. Let us do nothing for personal gain or reputation, but everything to fulfill the mission you have set before us as we represent you and our constituents. You have called us, O God, to do the work on behalf of the state of New Hampshire and to be efficient with that which we have been tasked with. O God, ruler of righteousness, lead and guide us today in ways of peace and justice. Inspire us to break down all oppression and wrong, to gain for everyone their own due reward, and from everyone their due service, that each may live for all, and all may live for each other in peace and harmony. We pray for your guidance and direction this day, O God. Amen.
The chair recognizes the member from Manchester, Representative Mary Heath, who will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please remain standing for the playing of our national anthem. The House will attend to requests for leaves of absence.
Mr. Speaker, the day, illness, Representatives Birch, Cushing, Ellis, Frost, Mary Griffin, Guthrie, Harriet Gathright, Kennedy, Kimball, Peter Schmidt, Spang, Welch. The day, important business, Representatives Aldrich, Baxter, Cody, Crawford, Lundgren, McBride, O'Hearn, Sanborn, Southworth, Verville, Walls. The day, illness in the family, Representatives Elliott and Rhodes.
These leaves of absence shall be granted unless otherwise ordered by the House. The House will attend to communications.
Mr. Speaker, in a letter dated January 24, 2022, Dear Governor Sununu, please accept this as my formal resignation from the New Hampshire House of Representatives. The mishandling of this legislative session has made it unachievable to safely and morally perform the duties of this position. It was an honor and a privilege to work for my neighbors of Hillsborough County District 38, and I thank all Granite Staters for their continuous work. Respectfully, Stephanie Highland, Hillsborough County District 38. In a further communication dated February 15, 2022, Dear Speaker Packard, I've been proud to represent the town of Merrimack, New Hampshire as a member of the House this past year. It has been an honor to serve our state alongside a dedicated and hardworking group of legislators. It is with gratitude and sorrow that I submit my letter of resignation from the New Hampshire House. Recent and unexpected changes in my family obligations make it such that I am no longer able to dedicate the time and attention that this position deserves. It has been a privilege to represent the town of Merrimack and the state of New Hampshire. Thank you for your leadership and understanding. Sincerely, Lindsay Tausch.
The House will attend to a request for unanimous consent. Representative Wallner for memorial remarks. It's awful noisy. This is memorial remarks. Will members please be observant?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today to remember the Honorable Claire Clark of Boscawen. Claire died on January 15th of this year. It was Martin Luther King's birthday. She had lived 92 inspiring and meaningful years. Claire, who was only 4'11", was a powerhouse. She may have had the nickname of Tiny, but she had a huge personality. Claire spent 33 years as a school counselor at the Winnisquam Regional School District. Claire always went above and beyond for her students, often visiting in their homes, talking with their families, and being sure their needs were met. When Claire retired, she certainly did not slow down. Claire was dedicated to helping children, families, and her community. She served 15 years on the Merrimack Valley School District Board, and her contribution to the schools in her community was enormous. Claire was a woman with immense interest, and she was active in a wide variety of community services. She served as chair of the Boscawen Police Commission. She served on the board of the New Hampshire League of Hard of Hearing. She sang in her church choir, and she was a strong voice for women and children of color. In the year of 2000, Claire's community elected her to the state legislature. She served here with many of us for 10 years. We remember her as a dedicated and valued member of the Education Committee and one of the first women of color to serve in our legislature. Claire was very proud of her wonderful family, and her seat in the legislature is now held by her daughter, Representative Caroletta Alcea. Her mother was her inspiration, and her mother was so proud of her daughter's accomplishments. Following in your parents' footsteps is a strong tribute to your parents. Claire will be remembered here for her contribution and dedication to bettering the lives of all New Hampshire children. Claire will be missed by us, her family, her community, and she leaves us with wonderful memories, and her spirit will always be with us. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Can we all rise for a moment of silence, please? House will attend to Senate messages. Without objection.
Mr. Speaker, the Senate concurs with the House in the passage of the following entitled Bill with Amendment, in the passage of which amendment the Senate asks the concurrence of the House. House Bill 95 FN, relative to milk pasteurization. Representative Pearl moves we concur and is recognized to speak.
Representative Pearl moves that we concur and is recognized to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm on microphone C3. So this bill came through our committee and passed unanimously. Basically, the only thing that the Senate has done is they've added a message to it to put on, this product is made with raw milk and is exempt from New Hampshire licensing and inspection. Raw milk, consuming raw milk may increase your risk of foodborne illness. So I would ask that you all concur with this bill as the E&A committee all does. Thank you.
The question is on the motion to concur. Are you ready for the question? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Concurrence is accepted. Further Senate message.
Mr. Speaker, the Senate concurs with the House in the passage of the following entitled Bill with Amendment, in the passage of which amendment the Senate asks the concurrence of the House. House Bill 549, relative to the System Benefits Charge and the Energy Efficiency and Sustainable Energy Board.
Senator Vose moves we concur and is recognized to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On January 7th, this House passed House Bill 549 by a bipartisan unanimous vote of 343 to nothing. The bill moved to the Senate, where it was amended in the ENR committee, and then moved to the consent calendar, where it was adopted by the full Senate. The amendment makes two changes to the bill, one technical and one addition. The technical changes the amount of money allocated to the EZ Board to promote energy efficiency from 1% of the system benefits charge to $400,000 per year. The addition to the bill is the critical piece. When the Public Utilities Commission rejected the plan for proceeding with energy efficiency back on November 12th, it requested the utilities to create a new plan, and it imposed several mandates on that new plan. The utilities discovered that those mandates made it virtually impossible for them to come up with a new plan. So what the Senate amendment does is it puts into statute the programming framework and components of the energy efficiency plans that were in effect in 2020, puts those components into statute. So now those energy efficiency programs can once again proceed. Without this amendment, hundreds, possibly thousands of jobs would be lost, and companies might have to cease doing business. Plus, the state would lose the benefits of all the energy efficiency projects that they are able to accomplish. Mr. Speaker, I thank you for allowing me to explain what this amendment does. And I now ask every member of this House, when called upon, to raise your voice in a loud, reverberating aye on this question.
The question is on the motion to concur. Are you ready for the question? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. And we concur with the Senate message. Okay. The House will now, let's see. The House will now attend to the consent calendar.
Mr. Speaker, from the Committee on Criminal Justice and Public Safety, House Bill 1176, removed by Representative Abramson. From the Committee on Criminal Justice and Public Safety, House Bill 1340, removed by Representative Abramson. From the Committee on Criminal Justice and Public Safety, House Bill 1392, removed by Representative Abramson. From the Committee on Executive Departments and Administration, CACR 30, removed by Representative Abramson. From the Committee on Executive Departments and Administration, House Bill 1262, removed by Representative McGuire. From the Committee on Health, Human Services, and Elderly Affairs, House Bill 1642, removed by Representative Blasek. From the Committee on Health, Human Services, and Elderly Affairs, House Bill 1654, removed by Representative Stapleton. From the Committee on Municipal and County Government, House Bill 1397, removed by Representative Amon. From the Committee on Public Works and Highways, House Bill 1040, removed by Representative Graham. From the Committee on Public Works and Highways, House Bill 1656, removed by Representative Somsich.
Are there any other bills to be removed from the consent calendar? Representative Osborne moves that the consent calendar with the relevant amendments as printed in today's House record be adopted. Are you ready for the question? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and the calendar is adopted. Representative Bean declared a conflict of interest on House Bill 1235 FN and did not participate with the vote on the consent calendar. Under the rules of the House, from the Committee on Children and Family Law, House Bill 1531 FNA is referred to the Committee on Finance. From the Committee on Commerce and Consumer Affairs, House Bill 1622 FN is referred to the Committee on Finance. From the Committee on Criminal Justice and Public Safety, House Bill 1682 FNA is referred to the Committee on Finance. From the Committee on Environment and Agriculture, House Bill 1547 FN is referred to the Committee on Finance. From the Committee on Executive Departments and Administration, House Bill 1288 is referred to the Committee on Ways and Means. House Bill 1552 FN is referred to the Committee on Finance. Committee on Health and Human Services and Elderly Affairs. House Bill 1130 FN is referred to the Committee on Criminal Justice and Public Safety. And House Bills 1526 FN and 1608 FN are referred to the Committee on Finance. From the Committee on Judiciary, House Bill 1235 FN is referred to the Committee on Finance. From the Committee on Resources, Recreation, and Development, HB 1339 is referred to the Committee on Ways and Means. Committee on State and Federal Relations and Veterans Affairs, House Bill 1256 FN is referred to the Committee on Executive Departments and Administration. And from the Committee on Transportation, House Bill 1462 is referred to the Committee on Finance. For what member does a member rise?
Parliamentary inquiry, Mr. Speaker.
State your inquiry.
Mr. Speaker, can you confirm for the membership that your office has had the opportunity to review the amendments that are printed in the calendar for this week, and if any of them have been determined as non-germane?
As far as I know, none of them are non-germane.
Thank you.
We'll now attend to the regular calendar. Okay. The Committee on Children and Family Law, to which was referred House Bill 1465 FN, an act relative to the appointment of counsel for the juveniles. Having considered the same, report the same with the following amendment and recommendation that the bill ought to pass with amendment. Senator Patrick Long for the committee. The amendment is 0614H, printed in House Record 6, page 65. The question is on the amendment. Are you ready for the question? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The amendment is adopted. The chair recognizes Representative Rice for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to lay House Bill 1465 on the table.
The question before us is on House Bill 1465 to lay on the table. Are you ready for the question? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and 1465 is laid on the table.
I don't have the bill jacket, so disregard the bill jacket. There's no debate on it.
Okay. Committee on Children and Family Law, which was referred House Bill 1647 FN, an act relative to the calculation of child support. Having considered the same, report the same with the following amendment and the recommendation that the bill ought to pass with amendment. Representative Josh O'Callaghan for the committee. The amendment is 0566H, printed in House Record 6, pages 84-85. The motion before us is on the committee amendment. Are you ready for the question? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and the committee amendment is adopted. The question before us is on the committee ought to pass as amended. Are you ready for the question? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. Nay. The ayes have it, and the committee report is adopted. It's referred to Finance. Under the rules of the House, this bill is referred to Finance. Majority of the Committee on Commerce and Consumer Affairs, to which was referred House Bill 1237 FN, an act relative to cigar bars. Having considered the same, report the same with the following amendment, with the recommendation that the bill ought to pass with amendment. Representative John Patuchek for the majority of the committee. Minority of the committee, having considered the same and being unable to agree with the majority, report with the following resolution. Resolved that it is inexpedient to legislate. Representative Richard Abel for the minority of the committee. The amendment is 0428H, printed in House Record 6, page 58. The question before us is on the committee amendment. Are you ready for the question? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and the committee report is adopted. The amendment is adopted. The question before us now is the ought to pass as amended on House Bill 1237 FN. Are you ready for the question? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and the committee report is adopted. Under the rules of the House, this is referred to the Committee on Ways and Means.
I'm voting on his behalf.
Majority of the Committee on Commerce and Consumer Affairs, to which was referred House Bill 1469 FN, an act prohibiting banks or businesses from using social credit scores. Having considered the same, report the same with the following amendment, a recommendation that the bill ought to pass with amendment. Representative Jeffrey Greason for the majority of the committee. Minority of the committee, having considered the same and being unable to agree with the majority, report with the following resolution. Resolved that it is inexpedient to legislate. Representative Christy Bartley for the minority of the committee. The amendment is 0342H, printed in House Record 6, page 65 through 66. The motion before us is on the committee amendment. Are you ready for the question? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and the committee amendment is adopted. The chair recognizes Representative Abramson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, just as a, I can't see you. Side note, when you're hitting the gavel, it's very close to the microphone, and it's hurting some people's ears. Mr. Speaker, I rise in support of House Bill 1469. The motion for ought to pass as amended. We were contacted many times on the Commerce Committee by constituents concerned that their posts on social media or even private gun ownership could be used against them by big banks and financial institutions. It is our responsibility here in the General Court to protect the rights of our citizens from abuses by big business, big government, big banks, big tech, or even big lawyers. The bill prohibits banks and other financial institutions from engaging in discriminatory practices. For freedom of speech to exist, private citizens must be able to post their opinions and experiences online without fear or reprisal. Freedom of speech isn't about protecting our right to talk about the weather, but whether to talk about the causes behind the murders of 262 million people around the world by their own governments, the causes of economic recession, rising crime, AIDS, and anything that might offend those in high positions. Please press the green button.
The chair recognizes Representative Bartlett to speak against the committee report.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm here at B1. Good afternoon, Mr. Speaker and colleagues. I rise to speak in opposition to House Bill 1469 as amended. Originally, the prime sponsor presented this bill as necessary against the quote-unquote woke culture. He repeatedly used this term, but when asked to define it even by our chair, he was unable to provide a definition. In the majority report, there's reference to China and the use of certain criteria in business transactions. It was stated this bill would prevent such practices in this country. Frankly, arguments in this direction, absent any facts or concerns, and possibly based on internet posts, is not a basis for New Hampshire law. The New Hampshire Bankers Association certainly agreed with the sponsor that banks and businesses should not discriminate based on subjective or arbitrary standards, like social media posts, and they stated such in testimony both orally and in writing. The committee heard testimony from the Attorney General's office. If this office had to review a charge of discrimination, it would be a difficult investigation or prosecution absent a written policy. It's unlikely that a bank or a business would specifically discriminate in writing the types of discrimination outlined in this amendment. Furthermore, there are anti-discrimination statutes in place already, making this bill completely unnecessary. I would argue that we do not need another law against discrimination, making it more difficult for businesses and banks to conduct lawful business in New Hampshire. Banks are already subject to strict regulation, and this bill would add more regulation to our banking department, but with added difficulties in determining motivation or fact. Please press the no button. And Mr. Speaker, I would ask for a division vote. Thank you.
The chair recognizes Representative Greason to speak for the committee report.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm over here at microphone D2. I'm hiding behind the pole, according to your line of view. The majority of the Commerce and Consumer Affairs Committee recognizes the emergence of a threat of a form of discrimination that is equally as repugnant as the practice of redlining that was commonly practiced by banks and financial institutions for many decades. And the committee recommends House Bill 1469 ought to pass as amended. The emerging threat is a form of financial discrimination that includes, but certainly is not limited to, banks and other financial institutions using non-financial criteria as a basis for whether or not to grant access to banking, and judging a person's or a business's or an organization's creditworthiness based on those non-financial criteria. This is social credit scoring as what is occurring in China and is apparently beginning to happen in Canada, and it has no place here in the United States. This bill would prohibit the banks from controlling your access to your money in order to control your behavior to fit their ideologies. If you think it hasn't happened or isn't happening, it is happening, and it's happening with greater frequency. Just this past week, TD Bank decided to seize the monies that had been donated to the truckers in Canada and turn this money over to the government, the Canadian government. No laws had been broken. The bank just decided they did not agree with the cause that the money was raised for, refused to turn it over to the proper recipients, and instead give it over to the Canadian government. Just this morning, a fellow American, business owner, Mike Lindell, stated that his bank cut him off. He hadn't broken the law. They just simply disagreed with his opinions. Whether you think he's a kook or whether you think he's right, that's not the bank's decision to make. Those who would naively say this will never happen need to look at history, because someone said about loading up a bunch of people onto trains and sending them off to gas chambers, that will never happen, and yet it did. Rather than waiting for history of abuses and then taking action to try to correct the problem, the majority of the committee believes preventing abuses in the first place is a better course of action and recommends House Bill 1469 ought to pass as amended. Thank you.
Representative Abramson has called for a roll call. Is that sufficiently seconded? It is sufficiently seconded. This will be a roll call vote. Members, take their seats. Roll call. House will come to order. The chair recognizes Representative Weston for a parliamentary inquiry.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, if I know that discrimination is already fully prohibited in New Hampshire, including discrimination in business and banking transactions, and if I know that this bill intrudes on the rights of businesses to assess whether a client or customer is an appropriate fit for their product, and if I know that the Attorney General's office feels that compliance with the vague language of this bill is unenforceable, would I now press the red button to defeat this motion so another motion can be brought forward?
The chair recognizes Representative Hunt for a parliamentary inquiry.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm here at B3. Mr. Speaker, it's incredible you might believe that some financial institutions and businesses might actually admit that they are discriminating because of gun ownership. Will I now ensure dictatorship by having this kind of discrimination is not permitted in New Hampshire? Will I vote yes on the pending motion?
The question before us is ought to pass as amended. It's on House Bill 1469. This is a roll call vote. If you're in favor, you'll press the green button. If you're opposed, you'll press the red button. Voting stations are open for 30 seconds. Yep.
Representative Expedia. Representative Newton. Representative Porter, could you come see me again, please? Never mind. Representative Porter, sorry, you're all set. Representative Vanda Castile.
If all members present had an opportunity to vote, House will attend to the state of the vote.
Sorry,
187 voting yea, 168 voting nay. Committee report is adopted. Under the rules of the House, this bill is referred to Criminal Justice Committee. Majority of the Committee on Criminal Justice and Public Safety, to which was referred House Bill 1468 FN, an act relative to the legalization of cannabis. Having considered the same, report the same with the following resolution. Resolved that it is inexpedient to legislate. Representative Casey Conley from the majority of the committee. Minority of the committee, having considered the same and being unable to agree with the majority, report with the recommendation that the bill ought to pass. Representative Chris True for the minority of the committee. Chair recognizes Representative Abbas for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I'd like to make a motion to table HB 1468.
The motion before us is to table House Bill 1468.
Roll call, please.
Who requested a roll call?
Representative Comtois?
Representative Comtois has requested a roll call. Is that sufficiently seconded? It is sufficiently seconded. This will be a roll call vote. Roll call.
Mr. Speaker,
The House will come to order. The chair recognizes Representative True for a parliamentary inquiry.
thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, if I know that this House has already passed a bill that would legalize 3/4 of an ounce, plus allow you to grow your own, and Mr. Speaker, if I know that even though some may say we can't pass 1468 because it will conflict with other bills, that I also know that if we legalize cannabis, then cannabis will not conflict with any state laws at all because it will be legal. And, Mr. Speaker, if I believe that the time has come to stop bogarting and pussyfooting around on this issue, would I then press the red button so another motion can be made? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Chair recognizes Representative Abbas for a parliamentary inquiry.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. If I know that if HB 1468 will conflict with bills that we've already passed and bills that we are scheduled to hear today. And Mr. Speaker, if I know that it's not a good policy to have conflicting legislation that to pass out of this body, should I go ahead and push the green button and support the motion and table? Thank you.
The question is the question is on HB 1468. The motion is ITL. Table. My mistake. This is a roll call vote. If you're in favor, you will press the green button. If you're opposed, you will press the red button. Voting stations are open for 30 seconds.
Representative Belanger. Representative Bradley. Representative Kalansky. Representative Hatch. Representative Lockman. Representative Richards. Representative Terry.
Have all members had an opportunity to vote? House will attend to the state of the vote. 276 voting yea, 79 voting nay. The motion to table is adopted. Majority of the Committee on Criminal Justice and Public Safety, to which was referred House Bill 1540 FN, Act relative to recording custodial interrogations, having considered the same, report the same with the following amendment and the recommendation the bill ought to pass with amendment. Representative David Walsh for the majority of the committee. Minority of the committee, having considered the same and being unable to agree with the majority, report with the following resolution: resolved that it's inexpedient to legislate. The amendment is 0616H, printed in House Record 6, pages 69 through 70. The question is on the adoption of the amendment. Are you ready for the question? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. No. The ayes have it, and the committee amendment is adopted. The motion before us now is the majority report of ought to pass as amended. The chair recognizes Representative True to speak against the committee report.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, basically, this bill says that any and all questioning and interrogations conducted by the police must be audio recorded and/or recorded by audio and visual means. I am sure, Mr. Speaker, you would agree that does sound like a great idea. I am also sure, Mr. Speaker, that with my clarification, you will agree that House Bill 1540 is in violation of Article 28A of the New Hampshire Constitution. In committee, we heard anecdotal testimony that most police departments in New Hampshire are already performing these recordings. The New Hampshire Association of Police Chiefs has stated that many police departments in New Hampshire do not have the money nor the equipment to comply with this bill. In committee, we heard anecdotal testimony that it would not cost that much for everyone to be in compliance with this bill. The New Hampshire County attorneys testified that they do not have the equipment nor the personnel to comply with this bill. In closing, please allow me to quote from one of our country's most loved and respected baritones of all time, Marvin Lee Aday. So as far as voting for a bill which I feel is unconstitutional, paraphrasing from that great song by Meatloaf, I would do anything for this House of Representatives, but I won't do that. Clearly, the New Hampshire Association of Police Chiefs has stated this bill will downshift cost. Clearly, the New Hampshire county attorneys have stated this bill will downshift cost. And clearly, the New Hampshire Constitution, Article 28A, states that this legislature shall not downshift cost to any political subdivision. Please press the red button to defeat the OTPA so that another motion can be made. Mr. Speaker, I request a roll call. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Chair recognizes Representative Roy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Please pardon my voice. I have a little laryngitis. This bill would require that all custodial interrogations be recorded, either audio or video, not both, one or the other, or both, if possible. If there is a police department in the state of New Hampshire that cannot afford a tape recorder, we have bigger problems on our hands than Meatloaf songs. It is very inexpensive. Most departments already have it. And furthermore, our Constitution protects the individual rights of our citizens to have their day in court and to have a fair interaction with the police department. Color me shocked that the New Hampshire Chiefs of Police Association don't want to have to record all of their interactions. Unfortunately, this is the wave of the future. This is what's happening across the country, and it's the best thing for our citizens, and it's the best thing for the police. If the police are concerned about allegations of false confessions, there's no better way to prove it than to produce the actual video and audio recording of the interrogation. This bill is the best for the citizens and for law enforcement. I ask you to set aside your like or dislike for the late Meatloaf and pass this bill. Thank you.
The question before us is the ought to pass as amended motion on House Bill 1540. A roll call has been requested. Is that sufficiently seconded? It is sufficiently seconded. This will be a roll call vote. Members, take your seats. Roll call. This is a roll call vote. The chair recognizes Representative Testerman for a parliamentary inquiry.
Mr. Speaker, at C3, if I know, as you do, that every police station does not have the capability to record interviews, and if I know that every police station doesn't have the capability or facilities to store, catalog, and transmit these interviews. And if I know that some police stations would have to purchase new equipment, train personnel, add facilities at the town or city expense in violation of Article 28A of the New Hampshire Constitution, then I would push the red button, and I wish you would too.
The chair recognizes Representative Conley for a parliamentary inquiry.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. If I know that recording interrogations provides a clear and accurate account of what was said in the interview room and by whom, and if I know that most New Hampshire police departments, large and small, already record these conversations and have procedures in place to store and catalog this evidence. Finally, Mr. Speaker, if I know this bill protects police as well as criminal defendants, would I press the green button to pass the bill? Thanks.
The question before us is the ought to pass as amended motion on House Bill 1540. This is a roll call vote. If you're in favor, you'll press the green button. If you're opposed, you'll press the red button. Voting stations are open for 30 seconds.
Representative Altshuler. Representative Sodi.
Have all members present had an opportunity to vote? House will attend to the state of the vote. 233 voting yea, 122 voting nay. Committee report is adopted. In the rules of the House, 1540 is referred to the Committee on Finance. Committee on Criminal Justice and Public Safety, to which was referred House Bill 1598 FN, an act legalizing the possession and the use of cannabis. Having considered the same, report the same with the following amendment, the recommendation that the bill ought to pass with amendment. Senator Scott Wallace for the committee.
Mr. Speaker.
Chair recognizes Representative Adjutant.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to make a motion.
State your motion.
I'd like to lay 1598 on the table.
Representative Adjutant makes a motion to lay 1598 on the table. We have a request for a division vote. Members will take your seats.
Against? No. Yeah, against table.
It's a roll call vote. Members, take your seats. Division vote. Members, take your seats.
Roll call.
No, it's division vote. It's division vote.
Division.
The motion before us is to lay on the table House Bill 1598. This is the division vote. The chair recognizes the representative adjutant for a parliamentary inquiry.
Mr. Speaker, could I defer my PI to Representative Abramson?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, if I know that this bill may still have conflicts with other pending legislation on the cannabis issue, and if I also know that this this issue was placed in front of private citizens on Citizens Count and other areas of social media, and that the general public overwhelmingly opposed what was being proposed here, if I know that the bill is over 20 pages long and includes 4 new misdemeanors and dozens of references to additional fees, fines, paperwork, and red tape, and if I know that this bill has to go to Finance Committee because it contains countless fees, fines, taxes, and millions of dollars in new spending and possible bureaucracy, would I press the green button to table this bill?
Chair recognizes Representative Abbas for a parliamentary inquiry.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. If I know that HB 1598 is a bipartisan compromise, and if I know that the policy provisions provided for in HB 1598 should be considered on its merits, and lastly, Mr. Speaker, if I know that HB 1598 will provide property tax relief for the people in New Hampshire, should I go ahead and push the red button and oppose the motion to table? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The motion before us is to table House Bill 1598. This is a division vote. If you're in favor, you'll press the green button. If you're opposed, you'll press the red button. Voting stations are open for 30 seconds.
Representative Ebel. Representative Levesque. Representative Sandler. Representative McBride.
All members present had an opportunity to vote. House will attend to the state of the vote. 114 voting yea, 238 voting nay. Tabling amendment fails. The question is now on the majority committee amendment 0207H, printed in House Record 6, pages 72 through 81. Are you ready for the question? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The committee amendment is adopted. Bills on second reading open to further amendment. Representative Testament offers floor amendment 0417H, printed in House Record 6, page 81. The chair is recognizing Representative Testament to speak for his floor amendment.
Mr. Speaker, I'm at C3. My floor amendment is fairly simple. There was left out of the bill any penalty if you gave any marijuana to any child. All I did was take the punishment or the penalty out of the medical marijuana and place it in as an addition to this bill. Thank you.
Chair recognizes Representative Abbas to speak against the floor amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in opposition to floor amendment 0417H. What this amendment would do is create a $300,000 fine if someone were to provide cannabis to a minor. Although that is not I don't support providing cannabis to minors, and the bill as written would have an age restriction of 21 years or older. However, it is felt that that fine would be excessive considering what the offense would be. And that policy provision was not considered by the committee. And therefore, I would ask everyone to oppose the amendment and push the red button. Thank you.
Question before us is does the member yield to a question? Member does not yield. The question is on the Testament floor amendment 0417H. Are you ready for the question? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The nays have it, and the floor amendment is not adopted. Chair recognizes the question is now on ought to pass as amended. Chair recognizes Representative Mola to speak against the committee report.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in opposition of HB 1598 because this bill raises many concerning questions that have not been addressed fully. All of us in this room carry the responsibility to practice good governance, protect public health, spend taxpayers' money wisely, and conduct our duties in a transparent way. 1598 casts a shadow on each of these responsibilities. The first intent of this bill is to legalize marijuana. It does this despite nearly 10 years' worth of data from other states, which documents how legalization in their states has led to a marked increase in underage marijuana use, a doubling of marijuana-related traffic deaths, an immediate rise in child welfare cases and infants being born with THC present in their bloodstream, and a marked uptick in hospital-documented mental illness crisis response events in teens and young adults. Despite these tragic consequences, we continue to find ourselves going up the same tired arguments that legalization is inevitable, and it's time for us to catch up with the other train wrecks that's happening in other states. And to add insult to injury, this bill proposes that we use $25 million of... I'm sorry. Would you all mind just let me finish, please?
That's not your job, Representative.
Sorry. Sir, would you mind if I could continue, please? Thank you.
You may continue.
Thank you. And to add insult to injury, this bill proposes that we use $25 million of the marijuana profits to fund drug addiction treatment to help mitigate a problem we ourselves will have made far worse. Another intent of this bill is to appropriate $14 million of taxpayer money for startup costs so that the New Hampshire Liquor Commission could manage 10 state-run retail outlets to sell marijuana to the public. The Liquor Commission estimates $5 million a year will be needed for operating costs, salaries, and benefits for 70 state employees to sell high-concentrate marijuana. Now let's discuss the transparency. A public hearing was held on the original bill, and then overnight the bill was amended with 3 pages of a banking service proposals, and the amendment was taken up in the executive session in Criminal Justice Committee the next day with little or no discussion. If that's not alarming enough, the amendment contingently appropriates $10 million to execute a banking scheme in order for New Hampshire to process the anticipated windfall of profits generated by marijuana sales. This bank scheme is being proposed so New Hampshire can navigate federal laws that prohibit banks from accepting money garnered through the sale of a federally illegal drug. However, the U.S. Treasury Department's Financial Crimes Enforcement Network guidelines still affirm that any bank used to process cash from marijuana sales remains subject to prosecution regardless of state law. Another concerning aspect of the proposed bank scheme is the language, which states that the board of directors for this bank shall, quote, consist solely of the executive director of the Business Finance Authority, the Attorney General of the state, and the state's treasurer. Is this really a good look for our state to have the state's chief law enforcement officer and the state's chief banker sitting on the board of a private marijuana bank? In one fell swoop,
The member will suspend for a minute. It's getting awful loud in here. The member has a right to be heard. Please keep it down. If you need to have a conversation, take it outside. Member may continue.
Thank you. In one fell swoop, not only does this bill aim to legalize a drug that we know will result in more harm to our most vulnerable populations, it also empowers New Hampshire state agencies to essentially act as a cartel, a drug dealer, and a money launderer all in one. Lastly, we need to look no further than the majority report to understand how the Criminal Justice Committee sees the purpose of this amended bill. Quote, this bill, as amended, allows consumers to purchase a clean, superior, tax-free product at a consumer-friendly price that is competitive with the black market. So the state of New Hampshire wants to be competitive with the black market? Surely we can be better than this. Here are some questions about 1598 that I would like everyone to consider. Why was the public given practically no ability to comment on the massive banking scheme proposed in the amendment? Will anybody be honest and admit how unhappy the Liquor Commission is to be entrapped in the oversight and management of the state-sanctioned marijuana stores? Was an agency consulted before the extensive banking scheme amendment was added to the bill? Did someone from the legislative or executive branch ask the New Hampshire Business Authority executive director to write the amended banking language to comply with the Federal Bank Secrecy Act on money laundering? And why does the bill indemnify bank employees and provide for this bank to have, quote, a distinct and legal existence separate from the state? Is this an admission that the state government officials are worried about liability stemming from the sale of high concentrate THC to the public? In closing, here are the final questions I'd like us to consider. Are we practicing good governance by operating a cartel-like marijuana monopoly? Is the state of New Hampshire protecting public health by selling addictive, high-concentrate marijuana to its citizens, especially given that it was just reported that drug overdose deaths in Nashua and Manchester recently hit an all-time high since 2018? Are we spending taxpayers' money wisely by appropriating millions of dollars to promote and profit from drug use, rather than do what we can to mitigate our current drug epidemic? Are we conducting our legislative duties transparently by rushing through an extensive banking amendment that is intended to navigate around federal banking laws? And finally, are we really going to sacrifice the welfare of our citizens over the false promise of marijuana revenue with no downside? Aren't the lives of our most vulnerable among us worth more than that? Simply put, New Hampshire has wisely held the line on marijuana legalization. We do not need to become the first in the nation drug cartel now. Mr. Speaker, I respectfully request a roll call vote when the time comes. Thank you.
Member yield to questions?
Sure.
Member yields, you may inquire.
I have a question. May I ask a question? I'm wondering if the representative is aware of recent studies out of Colorado and other states where marijuana is legal, that it's actually resulted in a decrease in the use by minors, contrary to what you have just reported.
I'm sorry, sir. I can't really fully understand what you're saying.
Colorado has recently reported a decrease in the use of marijuana by minors as a result of legalization. I'm wondering if you are aware of those studies and similar ones coming out of other states where marijuana is legal.
I'm aware of the fact that Colorado is actually trying to claw back on some of their legalization measures because it's been an absolute disaster. I'm also aware that in Oklahoma, it's a state actually I do work for remotely. They don't have legalization, but they actually allow the growing of medical marijuana and use of medical marijuana. And overnight, their farms in rural Oklahoma have been bought up and they have been transformed into these cartel businesses. They've had a rush of 3 types of cartels: Chinese, Mexican, and Eastern European. Every couple months or so, they actually keep changing hands as a money laundering way to sell their farms at high profit. It's a genie out of a bottle and they can't get it back. Thank you.
Member yield to further question.
Sure.
Representative Hargan, you may inquire.
Thank you very much.
Both sides of the aisle, before you start, Representative, both sides of the aisle are making an awful lot of noise. I'm asking, let's respect the speakers and the questions that are being asked. Please, if you need to have a conversation, take it outside.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Thank you very much for the representative from Hollis, I believe, for taking the question. Is it not true that HB 1598, although it differs in some details, is very similar to a bill that was passed just in the last couple of years and is very popular in Massachusetts?
Sorry, sir, I can't answer that question because I'm new to legislature. This is my first year, so I haven't seen what was passed in Massachusetts in the last couple of years. Okay. Although I do know from Massachusetts that marijuana sales actually have just overtaken, it's only taken less than 2 years, and marijuana sales have actually overtaken liquor sales in that state.
Member yield to further question?
No, I think we're done here.
Member does not yield. Chair recognizes Representative Conley.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Colleagues, the last time we met as a body, I stood here and asked you to consider a different cannabis bill. It's one that would have legalized, regulated, and taxed cannabis sales in our state. HB 1598, the bill before us today, has no taxes whatsoever. Cannabis would be sold to adults 21 plus under the auspices of the Liquor Commission. The state would earn revenue the same way it does with liquor sales, by buying at wholesale and selling at retail. By avoiding taxes, this bill would raise substantially more money each year. That money would pay for 2 important things: substance abuse treatment and education funding. Specifically, revenues would be used to lower the state education property tax. Tax relief, education funding, substance abuse treatment. These are concepts just about everybody in our state can get behind. As noted, this bill would place regulatory oversight of cannabis with the State Liquor Commission. That agency already has ample experience regulating controlled substances and keeping them away from children. The agency is also pretty good at doing business. And just to clarify a point that was just made, the Liquor Commission took no position on this bill in committee. The bill contemplates, at least initially, only 10 cannabis outlets. That would prevent the oversaturation of cannabis shops that other states, including Maine, are now experiencing. So to recap, we have a chance to deliver tax relief, education funding, new money for substance abuse treatment, and legalize a product that majority of New Hampshire residents say they want. This is a big win for our state. Colleagues, I ask that we pass it. It's time to get this done. Thank you.
Mr. Speaker, C3. C3.
Yes.
Does the member yield to a question?
This member does not yield. Chair recognizes Representative Testerman.
I'm going to waive my speech to the wonderful speech we had earlier on all the negative sides of this.
Chair recognizes Representative Abbas.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in support of the committee's recommendation of ought to pass as amended. HB 1598, as amended, is a compromise by many who favor recreational cannabis and many who, like me, that have traditionally opposed recreational cannabis. HB 1598, as amended, creates a policy like no other state that works for and serves the people of New Hampshire. Rather than create a separate commission and new bureaucracy, recreational cannabis will be regulated by the Liquor Commission, sold in a similar manner as our state sells liquor. The benefits of this model, which New Hampshire already has the infrastructure in place for, is that New Hampshire will be selling a clean, superior, tax-free product at a lower price than any of the surrounding states. This will encourage out-of-state consumers to purchase cannabis in New Hampshire. Other states made the mistake of electing high taxes and costly regulations, and this caused retail prices to significantly exceed the illegal market price. New Hampshire's tax-free price will remain competitive with the illegal market, and therefore, consumers would have no incentive to purchase cannabis illegally. Furthermore, similar to how our state strategically locates the state liquor stores, retail cannabis stores will fall in this path. This mitigates some of the potential negative impacts because there will not be retail stores in every corner. The revenue from this bill, which is believed to exceed the revenue from any other recreational cannabis bill, will be specifically allocated to give back to the people of New Hampshire. As what to do with that revenue, the first $25 million in net revenue will be specifically allocated to drug treatment, substance abuse treatment, prevention, and mental health treatment that is related to substance abuse. And after that, 90% of the net revenue will be applied to offset the statewide education property tax. I've heard many individuals talk about lowering property taxes. The time for talking is over. It's time for us together to take action and to deliver statewide property tax relief for the people of New Hampshire. Join me in lowering property taxes. All you have to do is go ahead and push the green button and support the committee's recommendation of ought to pass as amended. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
A roll call has been requested. Is that sufficiently seconded? It is. No, it is not sufficiently seconded. A division has been requested. This will be a division vote. Members, take your seats. Division! Members, take your seats. This is going to be a division vote. The chair recognizes Representative Moeller for a parliamentary inquiry.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. If I know that 1598 will result in more harm to the citizens of New Hampshire and it will actually trade off that harm for just the promise of money, would I now press the red button?
Chair recognizes Representative Spedia for a parliamentary inquiry.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. If I believe that the prohibition of cannabis has gone on long enough and that it is time to create a pathway for legalization, and if I believe that this bill would create revenue streams to help people with their property taxes, and if I know that revenue would also go to help with mental health services and to fund our schools, then would I now press the green button in support of this bill? Thank you.
Question before us is on House Bill 1598. The motion is ought to pass as amended. This is a division vote. If you're in favor, you'll press the green button. If you're opposed, you'll press the red button. Voting stations are open for 30 seconds.
Representative Amanda Bolden. Representative Dolan. Representative Von Plinsky.
If all members present had an opportunity to vote, House will tend to the state of the vote. 235 voting yea, 119 voting nay. The committee report is adopted. Under rules of the House, the bill is referred to the Committee on Finance. Majority of the Committee on Education, to which was referred House Bill 1516, an act relative to the source of funds for education freedom accounts. Having considered the same, report the same with the following resolution: resolved that it is inexpedient to legislate. Representative Glenn Cordelli for the majority of the committee. The minority of the committee, having considered the same and being unable to agree with the majority, report with a recommendation that the bill ought to pass. Representative Marjorie Porter for the minority of the committee. Chair recognizes Representative Porter.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The microphone doesn't want to work for me.
Go to one right behind you,
I'll
Representative.
just hold it.
Okay.
I think I'm okay. Oh, this is nice. Thanks, Matt. Honored colleagues, I rise in support of HB 1516 relative to the source of funds for education freedom accounts. New Hampshire Historical Marker number 28 sits proudly on the front lawn of the Center Elementary School in Hampton. It reads, "First public school in New Hampshire, supported by taxation, was opened in Hampton on May 31st, 1649. It was presided over by John Leggett for the education of both sexes. The sole qualification for admission of the pupils was that they be capable of learning. In New Hampshire, we have a long and proud tradition of supporting our public schools, open to all and paid for with our taxes. In fact, we are constitutionally bound to provide a free and adequate education to all children, and we do this through our school districts and our local community public schools. We are proud, too, that our state's public school system consistently ranks as one of the very best in the nation. I'm a teacher, Mr. Speaker. I wait for the room to get quiet.
The noise is getting to be unbearable in here from both sides of the aisle. I'm asking again, let the members speak in quiet, and we will get through this day a lot quicker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We are proud, too, that our state's public school system consistently ranks as one of the very best in the nation. But because New Hampshire still ranks 50th in the nation in state funding for public schools, the cost of operating our community public schools, which are open to all children, falls squarely on the backs of local property taxpayers. In fact, for most of us, the property taxes collected locally to support our schools is the largest chunk of that check we send twice a year to our town or city tax collectors. Granite Staters are also frugal, and we cherish our local control. Local voters elect local officials and charge them with creating a responsible budget in an open and transparent manner, and with overseeing how our tax dollars are spent. These locally elected officials are answerable to the voters, to you and me, and if we are not happy, we can and often do vote them out. That is why I urge you to support HB 1516, which simply states that education property taxes collected locally shall not be used as a source of funds for education freedom accounts. Those accounts, as you will remember, are overseen and administered by a scholarship granting organization who makes all the decisions about how the money is spent. This organization is not answerable to us, the local voters. New Hampshire communities fulfill their constitutional obligation to provide a free education to its children through their local public schools. We pay for them through our local taxes. We deserve a right to say how they are spent. If the state wishes to offer other educational choices different from our locally paid-for public schools, it certainly can do so, and in fact has done so with the passage of the budget. Passing HB 15 will not impact the voucher program established in HB 2 in any way. That program is being funded through the Education Trust Fund and the General Fund, with taxes collected by the state. Locally collected education property taxes are not being used to fund that program now. HB 1516 simply seeks to keep it that way. If you agree with me that local school taxes should be used to fund local public schools and that the expenditure of local funds should be overseen by locally elected officials answerable to us, the voters, to you and me, then please vote no on the ITO motion on this bill so another motion can be made. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Chair recognizes Representative Cordelli.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, I request a roll call vote. And so it starts, the attacks on the Education Freedom Account program, one of 17 such attacks we will be discussing. Death by 1,000 cuts, or so they hope. I almost don't know what to say about this. It is all over the place, as you can see in the minority report. First, as the Speaker just indicated, education freedom accounts are funded by the State Education Trust Fund. No local funds are involved. It is a state tax. This bill and the program does not use local funds. Maybe they've been confused with a bill that we tabled earlier this year that did do that. The argument in the minority report switches to the use of taxpayer funds to pay for religious schools. I guess the argument is now that education freedom accounts are okay as long as funds aren't used to send kids to religious schools. The U.S. Supreme Court has ruled on numerous occasions that funds go to the families who are then free to choose the program option that meets their child's needs. Most recently, Espinoza versus Montana, and going all the way back to Pierce versus Society of Sisters in 1924, in which the court stated, "A child is not a mere creature of the state." Love that line. All the Supreme Court decisions have said that when funds go to a family, they are no longer public funds, they are private funds, and it is their choice on how to use the funds. To exclude religious schools, now that would be unconstitutional, as the Supremes have said on many occasions. But what other Supreme Courts would Bill supporters have us ignore? Any suggestions? I could offer one. We just heard about local control. Well, I believe the best form of local control is parental control, and that's what this program is all about. So the approach here is to throw things at the wall and see what sticks. Maybe that's the only way to attack a popular and successful program that helps children. I started out by saying that I almost don't know what to say about this bill. But after thinking about it, I do know what to say. ITL, green.
Zim Cordelli has requested a roll call. Is that sufficiently seconded? It is sufficiently seconded. This will be a roll call vote. Members take their seats. Roll call. House will come to order. The chair recognizes Representative Cornell for a parliamentary inquiry.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. If I believe that the intent of this bill is to protect local taxpayers' dollars and to keep them local, and if I know that there were only 4 people online who registered to oppose this bill, and if I know that my constituents do not want their local school tax money paying for educational freedom accounts out of the district, but instead going to their local public schools, if you agree with me that local tax dollars should remain in local schools, please join me and press the red button so that another motion can be made. Thank you.
Chair recognizes Representative Ladd for a parliamentary inquiry.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. If I know this bill is another attempt by the education establishment to undermine education choice and the Education Freedom Account program, and if I know that using EFA funds for quality learning at religious schools has been found constitutional by the highest court in the land, the U.S. Supreme Court, and if I further know the EFA program initiated less than 1 year ago has received overwhelming support from parents seeking the best education fit for more than 1,800 children, would I then press the green button on behalf of New Hampshire families? Thank you.
The question is on the expedient to legislate report on House Bill 1516. This is a roll call vote. If you're in favor, you'll press the green button. If you're opposed, you will press the red button. Voting stations are open for 30 seconds.
Representative Crawford, are you here? Representative Folsom.
All members present had an opportunity to vote. House will tend to state of the vote. 181 voting yea, 174 voting nay. Committee report is adopted. You gotta do the last one, right? You gotta do the last one. Change the recommendation to the last one. Finance,
Oh, yes. Yeah, on
that was what, 12?
1598.
After speaking, the Chairman of Finance and the Chairman of Ways and Means speaking, House Bill 1598 is being referred to the Committee on Ways and Means, not Finance. Committee on Education, to which was referred House Bill 1624 FNA, an act relative to students with disabilities participating in co-curricular activities and making an appropriation therefore. Having considered the same, report the same, the recommendation that the bill ought to pass. Senator Michael Moffett for the committee. Are you ready for the question? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and the committee report is adopted. Under rules of the House, it is referred to the Committee on Finance. Committee on Education, to which was referred House Bill 1627 FNA, an act establishing an education freedom account, program administrator in the Department of Education, making an appropriation therefore. Having considered the same, report the same, the recommendation that the bill ought to pass. Senator Bohm for the committee. Are you ready for the question? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and the committee report is adopted. Rules of the House. The bill is referred to the Committee on Finance. Majority Committee on Education, to which was referred House Bill 1657 FNA, an act establishing a New Hampshire farm-to-school reimbursement program. Having considered the same, report the same with the following resolution that is inexpedient to legislate. Representative Ralph Bohm for the majority of the committee. Minority of the committee, having considered the same and being unable to agree with the majority, report with the recommendation that the bill be re-referred for interim study. Senator Linda Tanner for the minority of the committee. The chair recognizes Representative Tanner.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. HB 1657 is a bill to encourage and promote a New Hampshire farm-to-school program. It is not a required program for our schools. It is a startup grant program to encourage and assist schools and early child care sites to initiate and implement a collaboration with local farms to bring healthy, locally grown food to our children. Farm-to-school programs exist in every state and are part of the Farm-to-School Network. There are about 26 New Hampshire schools who are currently buying directly from a farm or purchasing local foods through a distributor and have youth gardens. The program works in 3 areas. First, it assists in the setup of a procedure to have local foods like apples and carrots purchased and served to students as snacks or part of their meals. Secondly, it provides students with hands-on experiential learning activities related to agriculture, food, and nutrition. Through school gardens, students get hands-on experiential learning in growing food and an appreciation for farming. At the same time, this program provides an opportunity for local farmers, a lot of them family farms, to market their products, to engage with schools, to have higher visibility in the area, and to share their love of farming and agriculture. In our committee, the New Hampshire Commissioner of Agriculture stated that he thought the program has great potential for our children and our local farms, but still needs some work. Through a study committee in collaboration with the Department of Education, the Northeast Farm to School Collaborative, perhaps the UNH Extension Service, and other interested groups, the specifics of funding and implementation can be worked out. New Hampshire Farm to School is a winner. It's a win, win, win. It's a win for the kids who will be getting nutritious foods rather than the packaged foods found in many school lunches and snacks. They'll have fun gardening and learning about where their food comes from. It's a win for local family farmers to have increased visibility in a new local market. And the final win is for our communities by providing opportunities to build family and community engagement through supporting our local family farms and strengthening the local economy. I urge you to vote no on this ITL motion so a motion of interim study can be offered. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Chair recognizes Representative Bohm.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in support of the committee recommendation of ITL. This is also a 28A issue. There will be an additional cost to schools for setting up the program. And also, where does the state come up with more than $600,000 for the DOE? School districts can now work with their local farms for the few months that food may be available. We don't farm year-round, unless for milk and eggs, where are you going to get it? The Commissioner of Agriculture also testified to that effect. There's only a few months of the year that farms' produce is available. Schools can already do this if they want. We don't need to spend additional money. Thank you.
A division has been requested. Members will take their seats.
Division. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to ask for a roll call vote on this.
A roll call has been requested. Is that sufficiently seconded? It is sufficiently seconded. This will be a roll call vote. Roll call. House will come to order. This will be a roll call vote. The chair recognizes Representative Hall for a parliamentary inquiry.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. If I know that when school districts buy food from local farmers, New Hampshire school children eat fresher, healthier food, and if I know that supporting local farmers strengthens communities and local economies, and if I know that when schools build relationships with local farms, educational opportunities emerge, would I now vote no on the ITL motion and push the red button so the motion for interim study can be brought forward for this important bill?
Chair recognizes Representative Ladd for a parliamentary inquiry.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. If I know school districts may currently purchase locally grown farm products for school meals without the need for legislation, and if I also know the Department of Education estimates that program startup responsibilities will result in additional state appropriations as well as unfunded setup costs to local school districts, and lastly, if I understand this bill has good intent or potential, however, it is simply not ready and needs much more work beyond time available for study this year, would I then press the green button?
Question is on the motion of ITL on House Bill 1657. This is a roll call vote. If you're in favor, you'll press the green button. If you're opposed, you'll press the red button. Voting stations are open for 30 seconds.
Representative Di Lorenzo. Representative Theberge. Representative Sumsich. Representative Schultz.
If all members present had an opportunity to vote, House will attend to the state of the vote. 186 voting yea, 164 voting nay. Committee report is adopted.
The majority of the Committee on Education, to which was referred House Bill 1660 FN, an act relative to school lunches and establishing the Meals for Students Fund, having considered the same, report the same with the following resolution. Resolved that it is inexpedient to legislate. Representative Deborah Hobson for the majority of the committee. The minority of the committee, having considered the same and being unable to agree with the majority, report with the recommendation that the bill ought to pass. Representative Arthur Ellison for the minority of the committee. Chair recognizes the member from Conway, Representative Woodcock, to speak against the committee report.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Good morning, or actually good afternoon. I know that there hasn't been a large number of successes during COVID. Yes, New Hampshire, like all states, received a large sums of money to help with COVID relief. Some workers received extra pay. Schools got a chunk of help to offset the costs of HVAC systems to provide additional cleaning supplies. The LOB saw new purifiers, and the list goes on. Most of these monies were used to reduce the costs to cities, towns, schools, and our own legislature. Money we probably would have not preferred to have if we could bypass the 2 years of stress, illness, and inconvenience. But alas, there was one positive result. There has been the schools within New Hampshire, like most states, began to offer all children breakfast and lunch daily. We've heard stories about teachers, staff, parents, and volunteers delivering meals via the school bus every day, stop by stop, during the first year of the pandemic, when most children were home. This process was supplemented by multiple programs on meals for weekends, with programs like 68 Hours of Hunger, to name just one. Most communities have had something to help reduce the food needs for children throughout the weekends. Money to communities were provided to run food feeding programs for children out of schools and recreational sites throughout the summer months for the same reason. Food is scarce or non-existent on a regular basis for many of our New Hampshire children. We recognize homelessness as is prevalent in almost every city and town in New Hampshire, and it's in the newspapers for one reason or another almost every day. But food insecurity, not knowing when or where your next meal will come from, is a real thing for our students. It's a double or triple whammy. Research is chock full of data that connects good nutrition and student success. Kids need nutritional food to fuel their brains and their bodies. I would guess that many of us in this room usually just grab a cup of coffee and a sweet, and we're on our way. A good choice? Probably not. But for a host of reasons, we had the option. There was food in the house, but we had the money to stop at the corner store or a gas station or Dunkin' or pay $4 at Starbucks for a cup of Java. By the way, that $4 would pay for 10 students to have a nutritional breakfast and lunch for one day at school under HB 1660. The point is that way too many kids do not have the basic food at home, or their parents or single parent do not have enough money to buy breakfast for the kids. I bet that, like me, many of your parents made you have breakfast every single day before going out to school. My dad would lecture me on a regular basis how breakfast is the most important meal of the day. For those of you that took Psycho 101 many moons ago, just think back on Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Or if you can't recall what it was, I recommend that maybe you Google it after the lieutenant is done giving his PI. Maslow was right then, and he's right now. I began a few minutes ago talking about a positive result of COVID. That hidden under the multiple layers of gloom and aggravation is one: children had food daily. All, yes, all children had access to food. Not free food by any means. Our taxes paid for it. But children had food at least 5 days a week that they and their parents could count on. I listened at the exec session and read in the blue calendar a quote that was made. It's the parents' responsibility. Reminds me of another quote that said, just let them eat cake. The reality is there is no food on the table, or in this case, in their stomachs. And we're wasting millions of New Hampshire tax dollars trying to educate kids when they're hungry and unfed on a regular basis. Ladies and gentlemen, that's HB 1660 in a nutshell. Breakfast and lunch daily to students that meet the federal low-income guidelines. This isn't like the current COVID response where every child, regardless of family income, gets a free meal at school, although I wish it was. Nope. HB 1660 restricts itself to those families that meet the federal low-income guidelines, those that have empty pantries and empty stomachs. The DOE estimates 40 cents a day per student as the actual New Hampshire cost after the federal school meal reimbursement. No New Hampshire student should have to start their day hungry because of their family's poverty. Please vote no on the ITL so an OTP motion can be made. 40 cents a day, that's it, to feed the most hungry and needy students in New Hampshire. Thank you. Mr. Speaker, I request a division vote.
The chair recognizes the member from East Kingston, Representative Hobson, to speak in support of the committee report.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This bill requires schools to make free or reduced cost breakfast and lunch available to children who meet federal eligibility guidelines and provides reimbursement to schools. In the education hearings, we learned that of 466 schools taking advantage of the school lunch program, only 30 were not already providing breakfast. The cost of starting up the program, personnel to oversee and run the program are not funded. In fiscal years 23, the cost would be $642,000. In fiscal year 24, it would be $649,000, and in fiscal year 25, $655,000. With only 30 schools in New Hampshire not participating in the program, it would seem to be a matter of choice over costs. For this reason, I request you support the ITL motion and vote green.
The question before the House is the Majority Committee report of inexpedient to legislate on House Bill 1660. Representative Woodcock has requested a division vote. This will be a division vote. Members, please take your seats.
Division!
The House will come to order. The Chair recognizes Representative Ellison for parliamentary inquiry.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. If I know that research shows that hungry children have a lack of focus on learning and ultimately lower test scores, and if I know that New Hampshire is the 5th richest state per capita in the country, but yet some of our families still do not have sufficient income to provide enough food for their children, nor do all New Hampshire school districts offer a free and reduced price breakfast and lunch program. And Mr. Speaker, if I believe that the headline from today's session should be Republicans and Democrats unite to feed hungry kids, would I now push the red button to defeat this motion so that the motion can be brought forward? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Chair recognizes Representative Nelson for parliamentary inquiry.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. If I know that there are approximately 30 schools that do, out of 460 that do not offer a free breakfast or lunch program, and/or if I know that it would be best to resolve this issue on the local level with the different towns making their decision, would I then press the green button in support of the ITL motion?
This is a division vote. If you're in favor, you will press the green 1A button. If you're opposed, you will press the red 2B button. Voting stations are open for 30 seconds.
Representative Salloway. Representative Macbeth. Representative Long. Representative Klein-Knight. Representative LaBranch. Representative Ham. Representative Heath. Representative Berry. Representative Ayre.
bring the whole head with it. He can do that in under 10 seconds with his eyes closed now. Have all members present had an opportunity to vote? The House will attend to the state of the vote. 177 having voted in the affirmative, 174 on the negative. The committee reports adopted.
Mr. Speaker,
for what reason does the member rise?
I rise to make a motion to reconsider House Bill 1660 and recommend we vote no.
Representative Terosian moves reconsideration of House Bill 1661, and it'll be a division vote. Members, please take your seats.
Division.
Anybody over there? They asked for it. I should just call them anyway since they asked for it. Okay. Oh, okay. All right, the House will come to order. The question is whether to reconsider the vote on House Bill 1660. Representative Green is recognized for parliamentary inquiry. No? Sorry, Woodcock.
Thank you. Representative Green will be right up, no problem. Okay. Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. Students of New Hampshire, if I knew that, yes.
Parliamentary
And if you, okay, we'll try again. If I know the students of New Hampshire who attend those 30 schools that were mentioned aren't registered with the DOE, and if I know that this applies to all the other schools in New Hampshire, and if I know also that this is kind of a tough thing, a mean-spirited attempt to stop youngsters who are hungry and need food, would I vote yes?
So one of the things we don't do is get personal or characterize motives in the New Hampshire House. Representative Woodcock. Representative Ladd recognized for parliamentary inquiry.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. If parents and I know that all students deserve proper nutrition, but if I also know this is a local control issue associated with local school districts, would I then press the red button? Thank you.
This is a division vote. If you're in favor, you'll press the green 1A button. If you're opposed, you'll press the red 2B button. Voting stations are open for 30 seconds.
Representative Comtois. Representative Ham. Representative Salloway.
Have all members present had an opportunity to vote? The House will attend to the state of the vote. 176 having voted in the affirmative, 179 in the negative, the motion fails. Committee amendment.
Mr. Speaker,
For what reason does the member rise?
point of personal privilege. Mr. Speaker, I would like to
Hang on a
apologize.
sec. Oh, I apologize. Go ahead.
Thank you. Together. I'd like to apologize to the group and the representatives as you as well. I meant no ill intent by my comments previously. I get a little emotional. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so we got a committee amendment. Got it. The question before the House is, oh, I do, don't I? The Committee on Education, which was referred House Bill 1661 FN local, an act relative to regional career technical education agreements, having considered the same, report the same with the following amendment and the recommendation that the bill ought to pass with amendment. Representative Rick Ladd for the committee. The committee amendment is 0356H, printed in House Record 6 on page 87. The question is on the committee amendment. Are you ready for the question? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. And the amendment is adopted. Now the question is the majority committee report of ought to pass as amended. Are you ready for the question? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and the committee report is adopted. Oh dear. Per the rules of the House, the HB 1661 is referred to the Committee on Finance. Yep. The majority of the Committee on Education, which was referred House Bill 1684 FN-A, local, an act limiting education freedom account funding to budgeted amounts. Having considered the same, report the same with the following resolution: resolved that it is inexpedient to legislate. Representative Glenn Cordelli for the majority of the committee. The minority of the committee, having considered the same and being unable to agree with the majority, report with the following amendment and the recommendation that the bill ought to pass with amendment. Representative David Luno for the minority of the committee. The question is on the majority committee report of inexpedient to legislate. The member from Hopkinton, Representative Luno, is recognized to speak against the committee report.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. House Bill 1684 requires the Education Freedom Account program to be held to budgeted amounts. Isn't that what we do for state-run programs? Isn't this what we do for programs that sometimes are hard to budget for? Isn't this what we do for DCYF and the budget for caseworkers? Isn't this what we do to support people with developmental disabilities? But the Education Freedom Account program isn't held to its budget. Last June, the Department of Education recommended a budget of $129,000. And by November, costs had exceeded $8 million. So how did this happen? The department used participation rates based on a similar program in Arizona. The department estimated that 75% of students who participate would directly be coming from exiting their public schools. According to the department, the savings advantage for New Hampshire taxpayers is when a student leaves their public school to enter the voucher program, presumably saving the local property taxpayer from having to pay the per-pupil cost to educate this student, and not costing the state any more than it was already paying to the student's school district. But that's not what happened. Instead, most of the students who signed up were already attending private schools or being homeschooled. These students had already made the choice to leave their public school and weren't costing the state a dime. But now we're all paying for it. Not the budgeted amount of $129,000, but more than $8 million. And that number's going up. Not because the program is wildly successful, not because it's, quote, freeing students from, quote, oppressive public schools, but the number's going up because it's a blank check to make taxpayers pay for someone else's private school tuition and homeschool costs. Free money, free money, free money. The director of the Legislative Budget Assistant Office projects the state exposure to be more than $70 million a year. House Bill 1684 would stop this runaway train. The Department of Education would be held to present and defend a budget that goes to the stated objectives. For instance, to provide students from low-income backgrounds access to education opportunities outside of their public schools. And they could be questioned by lawmakers to make sure taxpayer money is actually being used to open doors for students and families. I hope the House will look favorably on truth in budgeting, budget integrity, and the obligation to spend taxpayer money wisely. This bill doesn't kill the program. It lets the EFA program both succeed and be fiscally responsible at the same time. Please vote no on the motion of ITL so that another motion can be made to protect taxpayers and accommodate students already in the program. Thank you.
Does the member yield for a question?
No, I don't.
The member from Tuftonboro, Representative Cordelli, is recognized to speak in support of the committee report.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I request a roll call vote. Here it is, attack number 2. This bill would establish an arbitrary budget for the Education Freedom Account program. This bill would decimate the program. It would throw 1,800 kids out of the program who are currently being helped, and possibly force parents to pay back any EFA funds they have used to educate their children this year. Can you imagine that? How can we possibly let that happen? The goal of this program is evidently aimed at the number of children that can take advantage of the program. People are clearly scared of the success of this program as measured by the number of students electing for EFAs. The minority report says that the Department of Education, and I quote, should be held accountable because of their estimates and underestimating the number of students taking EFAs. But this bill has nothing to do with the department. The bill would punish families and children who are just trying to find the best education to meet their needs. What would bill supporters tell parents and kids who are kicked out of the program? Parents are paying more attention to their children's education than ever before, and they are watching what we do and how we vote here today. You see, we have always heard the claim that it's about the kids. Well, the truth is, for many, it's about the money, and parents know that. Parents can see what's going on in many schools, and they're not happy. And people wonder why this program is successful. We have a choice today. Throw kids out of the Education Freedom Account, incur the wrath of their voting parents, or we can continue to provide opportunities for children to get the education that they need, the education that will help them become successful adults, the education they need to help keep New Hampshire the freest state in the nation and a thriving state into the future. We have a choice today. What say you? I say ITL.
The question is on the Majority Committee report of inexpedient to legislate. Representative Cordelli has requested a roll call vote. Is that sufficiently seconded? That is sufficiently seconded. This will be a roll call vote. Members, please take your seats.
Roll call.
The House will come to order. The question is on the Majority Committee report of inexpedient to legislate on House Bill 1684. This is a roll call vote. Representative Mullins recognized for parliamentary inquiry.
Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, if I know that the Department of Education originally estimated the cost of the Education Freedom Voucher Program at $129,000, but it actually cost $8.1 million this year, a 6,000% miscalculation, and if I know that the legislative budget assistant has calculated the projected risk of this program to the taxpayer at $70 million a year, given the number of private school and homeschool currently enrolled students that are likely to enroll in the program, and if I believe that few hardworking New Hampshire families would even consider betting the farm against a poorly estimated, quickly adopted, and a scheme that hardly anyone truly understands and that every family knows how important it is to stick to the family budget, would I now press the red button to vote against the committee report so that another motion can be made?
Representative Ladd is recognized for parliamentary inquiry.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. If I know this bill is yet another attempt to decimate the Education Freedom Account program, and if I also know the average cost to sustain a child in the New Hampshire public school system approximates $20,000 per student, while the cost for an EFA account per student is only 1/4 the state per pupil cost, and if I know this program is wildly successful, has enrolled 1,800 students, and engages students in quality learning, would I then press the green button to support this successful program and fiscally responsible program? Thank you.
The House will be in order. This is a roll call vote. If you're in favor, you'll press the green 1A button. If you're opposed, you'll press the green 2B button. Voting stations are open for 30 seconds.
Representative Berezhny, Representative Cushman, Representative O'Brien, Representative Seaworth, Representative Bill Boyd,
Have all members present had an opportunity to vote? The House will attend to the state of the vote. 182 having voted in the affirmative, 171 in the negative. The committee report is adopted. The majority of the Committee on Election Law. On the previous bill, Representative Seaworth declared a conflict and did not participate. The majority of the Committee on Election Law, to which was referred House Bill 1423 FNA, an act relative to campaign contributions and expenditures and making an appropriation therefore, Having considered the same, report the same with the following resolution: resolved that it is inexpedient to legislate. Representative Fenton groaned for the majority of the committee. The minority of the committee, having considered the same and being unable to agree with the majority, report with the recommendation that the bill ought to pass. Representative Russell Muirhead for the minority of the committee. The member from Hanover, Representative Muirhead, is recognized to speak against the committee report.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This bill, House Bill 1423, establishes a framework for voter-owned elections for governor and executive council in New Hampshire. The bill would go a long way toward disempowering the donor class that dominates politics on the left and right by making it possible for every voter to become a donor. Every voter would receive 4 $25 certificates that they could direct to any qualified candidate. Candidates would qualify to receive these certificates by collecting lots of small donations from in-state voters. A candidate for the governorship would have to collect 2,500 $5 donations, 90% of which would need to come from New Hampshire residents in order to qualify for these voter dollars. This system would give candidates a very strong incentive to focus all of their attention on New Hampshire voters. And it would give candidates who do pay attention to New Hampshire voters a real chance against those candidates who would rather court out-of-state big money. This bill creates a framework for voluntary voter-owned elections. It would allocate $1 toward this fund in order to create a line in the budget for it. Future legislation would be necessary to fully fund this system. This bill is about endorsing the concept, and it would cost $1 to the state of New Hampshire to do so. Legislation like this, a system like this, has been working in Maine since 1996. And that system has the support of people on the left and the right, Democrats and Republicans, admire it and defend it in our neighboring state. Some say that this system would be too expensive. But it's a lot less expensive than the perception of corruption that causes citizens in large numbers, especially young citizens, to lose their faith in constitutional democracy. Thank you.
The House will be in order. Member from Rochester, Representative Groen, is recognized to speak in support of the committee report.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. HB 1423 provides a mechanism for taxpayer funding of $1 million for candidates for governor and $60,000 for candidates for executive council. I might say here that though the bill currently provides a $1 initial budget, if one candidate took the $1 million that will be offered under this bill, I would suggest that it would go considerably further over budget than we discussed in a previous bill here. The majority of the Election Law Committee believes that candidates who wish to represent citizens of New Hampshire in their government should not have their campaign funded by the government they wish to serve in. That's an inherent conflict of interest. Campaign financing has long been a controversial issue at both state and federal level. Legislatures and the courts have spoken on this issue over time and have produced transparency for and limits to political contributions. Transparency is provided by detailed reporting that is required of all political candidates and PACs. We can, from our existing laws, determine where political money comes from and to whom it is contributed. Our laws also provide limits to the amount of each contribution that can be received by a candidate for office in New Hampshire. The majority of this committee believes this bill is unnecessary and would not result in cleaner election funding. I might add here that there is an assumption in this legislation that government money is cleaner than private money, an assumption I don't believe I agree with. I urge you to support the ITL motion for this bill.
Does the member yield for a question?
Yes, I do.
Representative Baldessaro, you may inquire.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Representative, for taking my question. The last speaker, I got a little bit confused. I keep hearing over my friends over there that we're a democracy, a constitutional democracy. Are we a republic? Was it discussed in your committee that we are a constitutional republic?
That was not discussed in our committee, but we certainly are a constitutional republic.
The question is on the Majority Committee report of inexpedient to legislate on House Bill 1423. Are you ready for the question? Division vote's been requested. This will be a division vote. Members, please take your seats.
Division.
That also come to order. The questions on the Majority Committee report of inexpedient to legislate on House Bill 1423. Representative Porter is recognized for parliamentary inquiry.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, if I know recent polls of New Hampshire voters show 80% believe big money and special interests have more influence on New Hampshire politics than voters do, and that 2/3 support some public funding of campaigns so that their voices can be heard more loudly. And if I know this bill is the result of a 2018 public financing working group made up of 6 legislators, 2 senators, 4 representatives, I don't know how they got the 2 senators, but they did, half Democrats and half Republicans, including present and past chairs of the election law committees, after more than 20 years of study. And if I know that participation in the public funding program is entirely voluntary and allows candidates who are funded by small donors to have a real chance, then would I press the red button to vote down the ITL motion and let the voters have their say. Thank you.
Representative Groans recognized for parliamentary inquiry.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. If I know that this bill will not limit or reduce dark money being spent on the election process, and if I know that this bill will not limit or reduce money a candidate for governor or executive council can raise for their campaigns, and if I know that this bill will require New Hampshire taxpayers to fund governor campaigns for $1 million and executive council races for $60,000 in the situations described in this bill, then would I press the green button to support the ITL motion on this bill.
This is a division vote. If you're in favor, you'll press the green 1A button. If you're opposed, you'll press the red 2B button. Voting stations are open for 30 seconds.
Representative Fargo. Representative McKinney. Representative Murner.
Have all members present had an opportunity to vote? The House will attend to the state of the vote. 191 having voted in the affirmative, 165 in the negative. The committee report is adopted.
Committee on Election Law, to which was referred House Bill 1482 FN, an act relative to ranked choice voting. Having considered the same, report the same with the following resolution. Resolved that it is inexpedient to legislate. Senator Peter Terosian for the committee. Are you ready for the question? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. I heard you the first time, Representative. This will be a division vote. Members will take their seats. Division.
It's her bill.
No. This is a division vote. If you're in favor, you'll press the green button. If you're opposed, you'll press the red button. Voting stations are open for 30 seconds.
Representative Conley. Representative Khan. Representative Harvey. Representative Johnson. Representative Kofalt. Representative McWilliams. Representative Sweeney. Representative Welkowitz.
All members present had an opportunity to vote. House will attend to the state of the vote. 205 voting yea, 149 voting nay. Committee report is adopted. Committee on Election Law, to which was referred House Bill 1484 FN, an act requiring a forensic audit for the 2020 election results. Having considered the same, report the same with the following resolution: resolved that it is inexpedient to legislate. Representative Catherine Prudhomme O'Brien for the committee.
Mr. Speaker.
What purpose does a member rise?
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to make a motion to table 1484.
That is an appropriate motion. The motion on House Bill 1484 is to lay on the table. A roll call has been requested. Is that sufficiently seconded? Yes, it is sufficiently seconded. This will be a roll call vote.
Mr. Speaker, may I make
roll call.
Mr. Speaker, may I make a parliamentary inquiry? Yes, Mr. Speaker.
Well, not right now.
Oh,
I'll call you.
I apologize.
Got 20 to 4 right now. Okay.
This will be a roll call vote. The chair recognizes Representative Berry for a parliamentary inquiry.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. If I know that 1484 was unanimously brought out of committee and that this body has other things to go focus on, would I now press the green button to support the motion to lay on the table?
The question is to the motion to lay on the table on House Bill 1484. This is a roll call vote. If you're in favor, you'll press the green button. If you're opposed, you'll press the red button. Voting stations are open for 30 seconds.
Representative Bailey, Representative Baldessaro, Representative Belanger, Representative Binford, Representative Bixby, Representative Boards, Representative Cannon, Representative Conley, Representative Edwards, Representative Ellison, Representative Barbara Griffin, Representative Gagney, Representative Judy, Representative Klee, Representative Maggiore, Representative McAleer, Representative Mann, Representative McGee, Representative Melvin, Representative Jody Nelson, Representative O'Hara, Representative Osborne, Representative Pantelakis, Representative Piemonte, Representative Shapiro, Representative Tripp, Representative Vale, Representative Varney, Representative Wells, Representative Woods, Representative Harvey Bullia,
Have all members present had an opportunity to vote? House will attend to the state of the vote. 273 voting yea, 76 voting nay. The motion to table passes.
Mr. Speaker.
Chair recognizes Representative Pearson to make a motion.
Thank you, sir. I would like to have special ordered House Bill 1662, please.
That is to when?
Now.
Now. Okay. Would you like to explain why?
The person who worked very, very hard on this, both in Health Human Services Oversight and in the committee, is presently here, and we're not sure how much longer he will be available, so we would like him to speak to the great work that he did.
The motion before us is to special order House Bill 1662 to the next bill on the calendar. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it.
So there's no debate, but Edwards wants to speak. Okay, so just read through the thing and then.
Okay, all right. Majority of the Committee on Health and Human Services and Elderly Affairs, to which was referred House Bill 1662 FN. It's getting awful noisy again. Members will be quiet. An act relative to privacy obligations of the Department of Health and Human Services. Having considered the same, report the same with the following amendment and the recommendation that the bill ought to pass with amendment. Senator Jeffrey Soloway for the majority of the committee. Minority of the committee, having considered the same and being unable to agree with the majority, report the recommendation that the bill be referred for interim study. Representative Leah Cushman from the minority of the committee. The amendment is 0577H, printed in House Record 6, pages 87 and 88. The motion before us is the committee amendment. Are you ready for the question? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and the committee amendment is adopted. The chair recognizes Representative Edwards.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, fellow House colleagues, for this special order. This bill was presented in a stream of events that started in 2018 with the passage of our right to privacy into the New Hampshire Constitution. That was 2018. Then in 2021, the HHS Oversight Committee conducted our own privacy audit of the Department of Health and Human Services. That triggered the bill that we're voting on today. The bill that we're voting on today is the next logical step in the process of putting key infrastructure in place to match a corporate governance structure. It also requires risk mitigation planning in the name of a privacy impact assessment, establishes a couple of new positions with specific skills to investigating privacy issues and IT security issues to come up with mitigation recommendations. So altogether, I think that this bill is the next logical step in the progression of protecting our citizens' privacy, and those that came to me before the hearing and said they had to oppose it, I think were principled individuals. I didn't hear myself disagreeing with their principles. I wasn't saying no, I was saying not yet, because there's still time in either this session to hear bills on the topics of opt-in, opt-out, or future years if we don't find that the department is complying with these privacy requirements. So with that, I would ask for an affirmative vote on this. I don't believe there's anyone speaking in opposition, and I'd be perfectly happy with a voice vote, Mr. Speaker.
The question before us is the majority report of ought to pass as amended on House Bill 1662. Are you ready for the question? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. No. The ayes have it, and the committee report is adopted. Majority of the Committee on Election Law, to which was referred House Bill 1496 FN, an act requiring political subdivisions to make voter checklists available in spreadsheet form to any resident. Having considered the same, report the same, the following amendment, and the recommendation that the bill ought to pass with amendment. Senator Ross Berry for the majority of the committee. Minority of the committee, having considered the same and being unable to agree with the majority, report with the following resolution: resolve that it is inexpedient to legislate. Representative Paul Bergeron for the minority of the committee. Committee amendment is 0634H, printed in House Record 6, pages 66 through 67. Are you ready for the question on the adoption of the amendment? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. No. The ayes have it, and the committee amendment is adopted. The question before us now is the majority report. Ought to pass as amendment. The chair recognizes Representative Bergeron.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The language in House Bill 1496 as amended will not accomplish what the bill's title suggests it will. That is, to make voter checklists available in spreadsheet form to any resident who requests it. Current law says that the supervisors of the checklist or city or town clerk may provide the checklist in any form. The format chosen is at the discretion of the supervisors of the checklist or the clerk. The amended bill states that the supervisors of the checklist or clerk may provide the checklist as a paper or electronic copy. Again, the format chosen is still at the discretion of the supervisors of the checklist or the clerk. There is no requirement that the checklist be provided in spreadsheet form. The amendment states that electronic lists shall be the version updated within the last 31 days. But the supervisors of the checklist don't meet every month. In fact, most of them just meet prior to elections to approve all the applications that have been submitted from residents who want to be added to the checklist. So that provision has little practical relevance. Finally, during the public hearing on the bill, concerns were raised that the distribution of checklists in electronic form to any resident upon request would intrude upon our citizens' right to privacy. Anyone can go to the city or town clerk's office now to see the checklist at any time during regular business hours. But once a spreadsheet containing the names and addresses of voters is released to anyone, that information can be sorted, manipulated, and migrated to other databases so that the mailing addresses can be used for commercial or other purposes. Current law says the checklist can't be used for commercial purposes, but how would that be controlled if this bill passes? The bill as amended is flawed and won't accomplish what it was intended to accomplish. We should not pass a bill with an expectation that the Senate will fix our mistakes. The bill is poorly written and should be found inexpedient to legislate.
Chair recognizes Representative Berry.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The title of HB 1496, requiring political subdivisions to make voter checklists available in spreadsheet form to any residents. Thankfully, we have this thing called legislative intent. Mr. Speaker, the word here is publicly available checklist. That's correct. The list is already publicly available. As the member of the minority party mentioned, anyone can walk into any town clerk's office and see the publicly available checklist. What we are doing here, Mr. Speaker, is we are balancing transparent elections with the ability for the average person to access information and balancing privacy. So what we did, Mr. Speaker, was we amended it to where if you are requesting the publicly available checklist, you must be a registered voter of that town. Mr. Speaker, this bill, as amended, will increase election transparency. It balances the right to privacy, and it will help make people's faith in the elections increase. With that, I ask that you pass 1496 as amended.
The motion before us is the majority report of ought to pass as amended on House Bill 1496. A division has been requested. Members will take their seats. This will be a division vote. Division!
Some of these we're gonna sail through in terms of environment. There's a couple of debates in ED&A, so we'll get started. We'll pass these.
Okay. The motion before us is ought to pass as amended on House Bill 1496. The chair recognizes Representative Bergeron for a parliamentary inquiry.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. If I know that there is no requirement in current law or in this bill that the supervisors of the checklist must provide a checklist in the format that the requester is asking for, and if I know that the supervisors of the checklist do not meet every month, so the requirement that the list being provided is one updated within the last 31 days has no practical relevance, and if I know that releasing the names and addresses of registered voters to anyone requesting them in a format that can be used for commercial purposes is an intrusion on our citizens' right to privacy, would I then press the red no button in opposition to the motion of ought to pass as amended so that a subsequent amendment may be made?
Chair recognizes Representative Sweeney for a parliamentary inquiry.
Mr. Speaker, if I know that the information regarding this bill is already publicly available, and Mr. Speaker, if I further know that this bill simply updates existing statute in an effort to save taxpayers and those requesting the information funds, would I now press the green button? Thank you.
The question is on the majority report of ought to pass as amended on House Bill 1496. This is the division vote. If you're in favor, you'll press the green button. If you're opposed, you'll press the red button. Voting stations are open for 30 seconds.
Representative Callie Pitts. Representative Vincent.
All members present had an opportunity to vote. House will attain to the state of the vote. 183 voting yea, 169 voting nay. Committee report is adopted. Under House rules, the Bill 1496 FN is referred to the Committee on Finance. Committee on Environment and Agriculture, to which was referred House Bill 1226 FN, an act prohibiting the declawing of cats. Having considered the same, report the same with the following resolution. Resolved that it is inexpedient to legislate Representative Howard Pearl for their committee. Are you ready for the question? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. committee report is adopted. Majority Committee on Environment and Agriculture, which was referred, House Bill 1584 FN, an act establishing a capital improvement grant program for the benefit of state fairs and agricultural fairs. Having considered the same, report the same with a recommendation that the bill ought to pass. Senator Howard Pearl from the majority of the committee. Minority of the committee, having considered the same and being unable to agree with the majority, report the following resolution: resolved that it is inexpedient to legislate. Representative Sherry Dutsey for the minority of the committee. Are you ready for the question? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. No. Division has been requested. Members will take their seats. The question before us is the report of ought to pass on House Bill 1584 FN. This is division vote. If you're in favor, you'll press the green button. If you're opposed, you'll press the red button. Voting stations are open for 30 seconds.
Representative Boards. Representative Ford. Representative Egan. Representative Hamblett. Representative Kaczynski. Representative Knurk. Representative Love. Representative McAleer. Representative O'Hara. Representative Gail Sanborn. Representative Schamberg. Representative Sumsich.
If all members present had an opportunity to vote, House will tend to the state of the vote. 236 voting yea, 105 voting nay. Committee report is adopted. And this is referred to Ways and Means. Majority of the Committee on Executive Departments and Administration, to which was referred House Bill 1417 FN Local, an act relative to payment by the state of a portion of the retirement system contributions of political subdivision employers. Having considered the same, report the same with the following resolution: resolved that it is inexpedient to legislate. Senator Jennifer Rhodes for the majority of the committee. Minority of the committee, having considered the same and being unable to agree with the majority, report with the recommendation that the bill ought to pass. Senator Michael O'Brien from the minority of the committee. Chair recognizes Representative O'Brien.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I arise in opposition of the committee report of inexpedient to legislate. First, let me give you a little bit of background information. I was a firefighter for the city of Nashua for 35 years. I currently now serve as Vice President on the Board of Aldermen in the city of Nashua, which gives me a fair understanding of what is actually happening here. When we look at this particular bill, we must remember when the state retirement system started in 1967, A promise was made to entice all communities within the state to join from 4 separate retirement plans into one, and that the state would pay 40%. In time, that was negotiated down to 35%, and for decades, it stayed at 35%. But in very recent times, what has happened is that 35% was brought down to 30 to 25 in approximately 2011. So now the state pays 0. Now, this liability that the cities and towns that you live in, and if you have one teacher, one police officer, or one firefighter, you are making up the difference. Now, whether you make it up, where does the money come from? But basically, that is going, the state has paid nothing into the retirement system on that. So therefore, to me, this is a true property tax bill. The reason I rise against the ITL is because citizens need property tax relief. By you changing the committee's report of this, you will be bringing some tax relief back to your community. Not at 35%, a measly 7.5. There's nothing in this bill that's going to say, as we march on to the future and escalate, but currently right now, 7.5%. Now, it may be presented to you that this was rolled back for the employees to make up the difference. Well, when I started in the retirement system, we paid 9 3/4%. It is now up to 11.88. Your employees are tapped out. That is, your employees in your community that are tied into the New Hampshire retirement system have 2.13% less spending ability because of what the New Hampshire retirement system has done to meet that 11.88. This bill here has nothing to do with the unfunded liability. I support the unfunded liability in order to make a pretty decent, solid pension system. Again, this is just intending to be tax relief to the cities and towns that are making up to 35% deficit. Now, where does that money come from? It comes from the property tax. Money doesn't grow on trees. So I ask you to override the committee's report of ITL so that I can make another motion that would be more appropriate to assist every single municipality, city or town, and political subdivisions that has one employee in the New Hampshire retirement system. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Chair recognizes Representative McGuire.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This is, as the previous speaker mentioned, not a question of the unfunded liability, except in so much as the only reason the contributions to the retirement system are so high is because we're still paying off 20 years of severe underfunding starting in the early 90s. If we were only paying the cost of the pensions earned at the moment, nobody would care. But as it is, the towns took advantage of the underfunding for almost 20 years. And for the last 10 years, the state has declined to pay toward their share, toward the municipality's share of that debt. One of the main reasons that the state chose not to do so is that every municipality has full control over how many employees they have and what they're paid. So that a town that has 6 police officers like mine pays the same percentage as a town that a similar size that has 10 police officers. We still pay the same percentage. But if we were to contribute to the cost of the municipalities that spend more than others, we would be charging the businesses and people in the more thrifty towns to pay for the towns that pay more. That's not fair. And I have to say that the reason that the towns didn't notice that the employees were paying what had previously been the state share is that when it was implemented, there were a large number of other increases due to other unrelated changes to the pension system. And so they have insisted that they just got cheated. And that is not factual, but that's what they believe, and they have been trying for the last 10 years, 11 almost, to have the state take over part of their responsibility. I think that we should continue to let the municipalities decide how many employees and what they're paid, and include the cost of the retirement system as part of the employee benefits. Please vote green.
Mr. Speaker.
For what member's reason a member rise?
Mr. Speaker, I rise to request a roll call.
Senator O'Brien has requested a roll call. Is that sufficiently seconded? It is sufficiently seconded. This will be a roll call vote. Members, take your seats. The motion before us is the majority report of inexpedient to legislate on House Bill 1417. This is a roll call vote. The chair recognizes Representative O'Brien for a parliamentary inquiry.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, if I know that promises made in 1967 that the state of New Hampshire would be paid 35% to the New Hampshire retirement system is a promise that was made, and today it is a promise that should be kept. Mr. Speaker, if I further know that our people that live in our communities are burdened today with economic losses, and by the rollback from 35% to zero payment into the New Hampshire retirement system by the state has put a tax burden onto our citizens. Then, Mr. Speaker, I ask you to vote with me and to vote red so a subsequent motion can be made. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The chair recognizes Representative Tony Lakers for a parliamentary inquiry.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. If I know that cities, towns, and schools determine how many employees they hire and what they're paid, and therefore, to a large extent, determine pension cost, and if I know that given that, if the state were to pay a portion of the pension costs, the state should have control of the number of employees and their pay. And further, if I know that when the state stopped paying part of the pension costs, that cost was shifted to employees, not the cities, towns, and schools, and therefore had no impact on property taxes, would I press the green button to support the committee recommendation of inexpedient to legislate? Thank you.
The question is on the motion to inexpedient to legislate for House Bill 1417. This is a roll call vote. If you're in favor, you'll press the green button. If you're opposed, you'll press the red button. Voting stations are open for 30 seconds.
Representative Gallagher. Representative Levesque. Representative Perez. Representative Trelevin. Representative Ward.
If all members present had an opportunity to vote, House will attend to the state of the vote. 173 voting yea, 172 voting nay. Committee report is adopted.
Make it a tie. Vote, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, C3.
For what members and reason the member rise?
Would a motion be in order?
State your motion.
I move to reconsider the vote on House Bill 1417 and ask members to vote no.
The motion before us is to reconsider the vote on 1417. A division has been requested. Members will take their seats. Roll call has been requested. Is this sufficiently seconded? It is sufficiently seconded. This will be a roll call vote. Members will take their seats. Roll call. Members, take your seats. This is a roll call vote on the motion to reconsider. This is a roll call vote. The chair recognizes Representative O'Brien for a parliamentary inquiry.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. If you know, as I know, that sometimes we do make a mistake, it's a little button, and that we may have pressed the wrong one. So therefore, Mr. Speaker, with that in mind, and also, if we truly believe in property tax relief, because that's the crux of this, if you believe in that as I do, Mr. Speaker, then would you support reconsideration of this bill? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The chair recognizes
Press
Representative
green. Thank you.
The chair recognizes Representative McGuire for a parliamentary inquiry.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. If I believe we have debated this bill thoroughly, and we are through with it, would you press the red button to confirm your vote?
The motion before us is the reconsideration vote on 1417. If you're in favor, you will press the green button. If you're opposed, you will press the red button. Voting stations are open for 30 seconds.
Representative Mann?
Not yet. If all members present had an opportunity to vote, the House will attend to the state of the vote. Yay! 180 voting yea, 171 voting no. Reconsideration is adopted.
On the motion of inexpedient to legislate. Okay. So now, we're now inexpedient to...
Mr. Speaker?
House will come to order.
Mr. Speaker?
For what member does a member rise? For what reason a member rise?
Mr. Speaker, I move to lay House Bill 1417 on the table.
The motion before us is to lay House Bill 1417 on the table. Division has been requested. A roll call has been requested. Is that sufficiently seconded? It is sufficiently seconded. This will be a roll call vote on laying 1417 on the table. Roll call. The motion before us is to lay House Bill 1417 on the table. Members will be in their seats. This is a roll call vote. The chair recognizes Representative O'Brien for a parliamentary inquiry.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, if you believe, as I do, that property tax relief puts things on our constituents' tables, not take it away from the table, So therefore, if you believe in that thought, Mr. Speaker, would you vote for me and vote red against the motion to table? Thank you.
The chair recognizes Representative McGuire for a parliamentary inquiry.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. If I know that a change in the retirement system contributions, for whatever reasons, does not always flow directly down to property taxes, and if I believe that the municipalities should be responsible for their own employees, would I not vote to table this bill and press the green button?
The motion before us is to lay House Bill 1417 on the table. This is a roll call vote. If you're in favor, you'll press the green button. If you're opposed, you'll press the red button. Voting stations are open for 30 seconds.
Representative Cushman. Representative Perez.
Have all members present had an opportunity to vote? House will attend to the state of the vote. 171 voting yea, 180 voting nay. The motion to lay on the table fails.
Mr. Speaker. D1, Mr. Speaker.
Yes.
D1.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you said B1.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to make a motion, and maybe you can help me with that motion.
What is the motion?
I'd like to make a motion to refer this bill back to the committee that it came from.
That is a legitimate motion, but to have that motion pass, it would take 2/3 because it's an early bill.
Okay, thank you. I'll withdraw my motion.
So
now we're
back at inexpedient to legislate. That is the question before the body.
Okay.
Mr. Speaker.
What reason does the member rise?
That's the question. Mr. Speaker, this bill's going to... Is this bill going to finance?
If it passes.
Thank you.
We're back to the motion of inexpedient to legislate. We're back to the motion of inexpedient to legislate. A division has been requested. A roll call has been requested. Is that sufficiently seconded? It's not sufficiently seconded. This will be a division vote. Division! The motion before us is inexpedient to legislate on House Bill 1417. This is a division vote. The chair recognizes Representative O'Brien for a parliamentary inquiry.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, if you know, I don't want to continue to bore you with PIs, but in particular, just to rehash briefly, that this is a true property tax bill that will help out our cities and towns who have employees in the New Hampshire retirement system. And if you believe that every single taxpayer could use a break at this particular time, and if you also believe that municipalities could use this break, then would you vote with me on the motion to vote against the motion of ITL? Vote red. Very confusing, Mr. Speaker. Thank you.
Chair recognizes Representative McGuire for a parliamentary inquiry.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. If I know that this is a bill that the municipalities have been begging for the last 10 years, and that we are not bound by the decisions of previous legislators whether to share in the cost of their employees or not, and if I know that their decisions on hiring and pay are what determines how much they pay toward the retirement system, would I not press the green button? Thank you.
The question before us is the majority ITL motion of ITL on House Bill 1417. This is a division vote. If you're in favor, you'll press the green button. If you're opposed, you'll press the red button. Voting stations are open for 30 seconds.
Representative Woodcock.
Have all members present had an opportunity to vote? House will attend to the state of the vote. 171 voting yea, 179 voting nay. The motion fails.
Mr. Speaker, I would like to be recognized for an ought to pass motion.
I recognize you to make a motion.
Mr. Speaker, since the prevailing motion failed, I would like to make the new motion on House Bill 1417 of ought to pass.
The House will be in order. The motion.
Mr. Speaker, excuse me, Mr. Speaker, may I have that by roll call, please?
A roll call has been requested. Is that sufficiently seconded? It is sufficiently seconded. This will be a roll call vote. Members, take your seats. Roll call. The motion before us is ought to pass on House Bill 1417. This is going to be a roll call vote. The chair recognizes Representative O'Brien for a parliamentary inquiry.
Mr. Chair, thank you, Mr. Speaker. If you know, as I know, that this will gain help to municipalities in the form of tax relief, and if you know, as I know, that you can't have the employees of the municipality bear solely the burden, therefore, would you stand with me and vote green on the ought-to-pass motion and give true relief to our citizens? Please vote green.
Chair recognizes Representative Allegro for a parliamentary inquiry.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. If I knew that what this motion would do, if we adopt the idea of supporting this retirement program, would spread the tax burden from some of our fiscally irresponsible municipalities.
If I know.
If I know that this would spread the burden from some of our big spending municipalities to smaller municipalities like Campton or Thornton or Rumney, would I then press the red button to vote this down? Thank you.
The questions before us is the ought to pass motion on House Bill 1417. This is a roll call vote. You're in favor, you'll press the green button. If you're opposed, you'll press the red button. Voting stations are open for 30 seconds.
Representative Abbas. Also, Mr. Speaker.
If all members present had an opportunity to vote, House will attend to the state of the vote. 182 voting yea, 169 voting nay.
Mr. Speaker.
The motion of ought to pass the committee report is adopted.
Mr. Speaker, I rise for reconsideration of House Bill 1417 and urge that people vote no, the red button.
The motion before us is reconsideration on House Bill 1417. A division has been requested.
No, Mr. Speaker, I arise for a roll call.
A roll call has been. Is it sufficiently seconded? Yes. It is sufficiently seconded. It is not sufficiently seconded. It'll be a division vote. Division!
Mr. Speaker, over here at D2.
Where are we?
Right here, sir.
Yes.
I rise to make a motion to table the reconsideration.
We're in the vote. We're in the voting mode now. The motion before us is reconsideration of House Bill 1417. This is the division vote. If you're in favor, you will press the green button. If you're opposed, you will press the red button. Voting stations are open for 30 seconds.
Representative Gay, Representative DeSimone, Representative Judy, Representative Kaczynski, Representative Mackey, Representative Kittredge, Representative Pearl, Representative Nordgren, Representative Wolper, All set. Have all members present had an opportunity to vote? House will attend to the state of the vote. (165) voting yea, 181 voting nay.
Mr.
The motion to
Speaker.
reconsideration fails.
Mr. Speaker, D2. D2, I'd like to make a motion.
Can I finish first? This bill is referred to the Committee on Finance.
Mr. Speaker, D2.
Yes.
I'd like to make a motion to recess until tomorrow morning.
I'm going right into the third reading motion, so withdraw your motion, please. The chair recognizes the member from
withdraw my
Charlestown.
motion.
The chair recognizes the member from Charlestown, Representative Stephen Smith, for a third reading motion.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Resolved that the House now adjourned from the early session, that the business of the late session be in order at the present time, that the reading of bills be by title only and resolutions by caption only, and that all bills ordered to third reading be read a third time by this resolution, and that all titles of bills be the same as adopted, and that they be passed at the present time. And when the House adjourns today, it be to meet Thursday, February 17th at 9:30 a.m.
We still have business to attend to, so would please, everyone, please stay in your seats. We have announcements and we have unanimous consent. Question is on the third reading motion. Are you ready for the question? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. Aye. The ayes have it, and the motion is adopted. Representative Reed has an announcement. Members, please respect the other members that are up here making an announcement and making a motion for unanimous consent.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I'm just waiting for some of my co-sponsors to come up. I would like the whole House to be invited tomorrow all day long. We are going to have a chocolate election. You will be invited to sample a wide array of chocolates right out here and then fill out a ballot using ranked choice voting to choose your favorite chocolate. Fun times for all, and I really appreciate everybody coming tomorrow. And thank you to my co-sponsors for standing with me.
Before we get to unanimous consent, if everybody will pay attention for a couple of minutes, I will lay out to you how tomorrow morning is going to work. As you know, we're going to have the governor in for the state of the state. That is going to take place at roughly 10 o'clock. We are going to start at 9:30. We'll go through the prayer and the salute to the flag, and then we'll go into a brief recess while the Executive Council, the Supreme Court Justice, the Senate, the constitutional officers, the Secretary of State, and the Treasurer are brought in. And then the Senate will be brought in, and then the Governor will come in last and do the State of the State. We're expected to last about 45 minutes, roughly, what he is giving us an estimate for. Right after that, we'll recess for 10, 15 minutes, let everybody leave, and then we'll get back into the regular calendar, which should be between 11 and 11:30. Representative Umberger has requested unanimous consent for a memorial.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Honorable Donald Philbrick passed away in January. He was 87 years old. Don served for 14 years in the House and 22 years as a selectman in Eaton, New Hampshire. His philosophy in life was that you can't complain about something if you don't do something about it. This philosophy is what led him to initially run for the House. Don served for 14 years on the Environment and Agricultural Committee. The Honorable James Finzi, a past chairman of Environment and Agricultural Committee, had this to say about Don. When I first got elected to the House, I had the pleasure to be seated next to Don on the Environment and Agricultural Committee. He was a quiet, self-contained man, but quietly interesting. As had been the case through my tenure in the House, that committee left politics at the door and looked at issues and how they could have a positive or negative effect on the state's residents. Since Don and I were both from small towns, we pretty much approached most issues with the same point of view. Don was a fine public servant who did not succumb to partisanship, and I do not remember him being absent more than 1 or 2 days in the time I sat on that committee with him. When we disagreed on an issue, we'd argue a point, but never let that disagreement interfere with being cordial. He enjoyed his work and did a great job. We both took great delight in the mammoth sludge wars between Betty Hall, Derek One, and Dave Babson. The Honorable Dave Babson related an interesting story about Don. There was a discussion, or as Dave called it, a war, over biosolids and wood ash disposal. Don asked the chairman, "May I question Mr. Hansen, which has nothing to do with the bill we are discussing, but everything to do with Mr. Hansen, who is testifying?" The chairman agreed he could ask the question. Mr. Hansen answered yes. The chairman agreed. Don asked, "Mr. Hansen, were you a pilot on Air Force One bringing JFK back from Dallas?" Mr. Hansen answered yes. Don, in his understated way, said, "I was your electronic officer on that flight." Needless to say, conversation on the bill stopped. Yes, Don also spent 22 years in the Air Force. And as an aside, you don't get to work on Air Force One unless you are among the elite of the Air Force. Don, thank you for your service. The Honorable Gene Chandler summed up Don's service to the state. Don was very thoughtful and did his homework. His positions were well thought out, even if you didn't agree with him. He made a decision to support you or a position on a bill, it was rock solid, and he would follow through. Both at the state and county level, he was always concerned with how the issue would affect the small towns in the North Country. Don was very proud of his service on Air Force One, as well as his service to his town of Eaton. Anyone aspiring to be a good or better representative wouldn't need to look much further than emulating Don Philbrick. I firmly believe that each and every one of us should emulate Don. Be thoughtful in determining how you will vote on a bill. Do your homework. Attend all committee meetings, sessions, and county delegation meetings. Don was an outstanding state representative, and I am proud to have known him. May you rest in peace, Don. Thank you.
We all rise for a moment of silence.
Mr. Speaker, I'd move that the remarks of our friend from Kearsarge be placed in the permanent journal.
Without objection. Chair recognizes Representative LaBlanche for unanimous consent.
Good evening, Mr. Speaker, and good evening, honorable colleagues. Yesterday marked 10 years since I was diagnosed with stage 3 colon cancer. Now I'm thankful for the fact that cancer made me into the man I am today and has made me appreciate every day of my life and to see the positives in every situation. I distinctly remember that having cancer and dealing with the American healthcare system is what led me to political activism. The hospital for which I received care was charging my insurance $40 for a single Tylenol. That meant for a guy my size, I need 2, so that's $80 for a single dose. That means that during my 7-day hospitalization, the hospital made over $1,500 in pure profit on Tylenol alone. While a bottle of Tylenol across the street at CVS cost $6.99 at the time. Dealing with cancer was already hard, but knowing that somebody was making money off of my suffering was kicking me while I was down. I will never forgive the system for profiting off my suffering and that of so many others, and I will continue fighting for what is right today.
Mr. Speaker, A1, I move that we submit the former speaker's remarks for the permanent journal.
Without objection. Representative Smith moves that the House stand in recess for the purpose of the introduction of bills, enrolled bill amendments, and enrolled bill reports, and receiving the messages are ready for the question. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The House is in recess until tomorrow, Thursday at 9:30 a.m. And do not take your clicker with you. Just so, one more thing on the governor's state of the state. If you're not in your seat at 9:30, the chamber is going to be closed until after the state of the state. We're not going to have people coming in and out.